Hello, welcome to Glastonbury Romance part whatever. I don't remember anymore. So where were we? I believe a green-colored gust of rain wind came rushing across the spacious garden, came swishing and swirling through the laurel bushes, came moaning through the cedar boughs. That's what just happened. Just touch the bell, would you, Mary, so that they know we want the lamp? Broke in the voice of Tilly Crow. The coming of the lamp changed the whole mental atmosphere of the group of people. It brought their minds back from the vibrations of the ideal to the agitation of the real. As the round orb of light was placed in the center of a great table, there entered the devastating reminder that 40,000 pounds worth of power over the lives of men and women had passed from this comfortable room, from this secluded lawn, into some little shabby domicile at Glastonbury. How many children has this lucky person got, Philip? Inquired Mary in a low voice. 2 was Philip's laconic answer. But didn't you say he was a nuisance? Persisted Mary Crow. 2 great sprawling girls, sneered Philip. I suppose they'll buy Chalice House, or try and get the bishop to sell them Abbey House, and turn out Euphemia Drew. Oh, I hope they will, cried Mary. You hope they will? I'm tired of Abbey House. I'd like the fun of seeing Miss Drew choose new wallpapers. I'm afraid you'll never get the pleasure, Mary, said Aunt Elizabeth. Euphemia was born in the Abbey House, and she'll die in the Abbey House. It's all very well for you, Elizabeth, piped up Tilly Crow in a voice like that of a melancholy meadow pipit. You've got your 200 a year. Yes, and I'm going to leave you in peace too, Tilly, and for on my 200 a year. And live on my 200 a year. I shall take one of those little workmen's cottages in Benedict Street that the town council put up. Philip turned about her with a good-humored bluster. You'll take nothing of the sort, Aunt, he cried. Why, those wretched socialistic cardboard toys don't even keep the rain out. It's simply disgraceful of you, Philip, threw in Persephone, the way you do all you can to make the work of the town's council of yours so difficult. By the way, exclaimed Philip, suddenly disregarding her protest and speaking in a raised and carefully modulated voice, where do you intend to sleep tonight, Cousin John? Philip reads all our thoughts, you know, murmured Aunt Elizabeth. He thinks you've got an eye on that big sofa in the drawing-room. There won't be any sleeping on sofas in a house where I am, cried Tilly Crow sharply. Her voice sounded so exactly like the miserable tweet-tweet of a bird soaked in a windy rain that John felt disarmed and sorry for her. Don't be afraid, Philip, he said, and don't you fret about the sofa, Cousin Tilly. I've got a room for 2 nights at the inn. Persephone leaned over and whispered something in Philip's ear. It was impossible for John to hazard the least conjecture as to what she said, but a minute later Philip addressed him in a loud, if not a very amiable tone. I shall be offended, Cousin John, and I'm sure your Cousin Tilly will be terribly hurt if you don't let us pay for your room while you're here. How long a holiday have you allowed yourself? How soon are you returning to Paris? I haven't on my soul, I haven't thought about it yet, muttered John Crow. But thanks very much for the room at the inn. His voice suddenly became unnaturally loud. Thanks very much, Cousin Philip. I shall be glad to stay 2 nights at the inn at your expense. Shall I tell them to send the bill to you up here? John's tone, when his voice subsided, left everybody a little uncomfortable. Well, Philip said, well, yes, of course. Yes, I shall be here a few days more, perhaps. His voice sank down at that point in a polite but weary sigh. It was plain to them all that he felt so very strong attraction to the wanderer from across the channel. He felt no. Very important, he didn't feel any. His exact and precise thoughts, in fact, might be expressed thus. This fellow never expected any legacy. He only came to see what he could get out of me. He's on his beam-ends. He'll probably get consumption, diabetes, and the pox. If I give him an inch, he'll take an L. At all costs, I mustn't let him come to Glastonbury. Miss Elizabeth turned round toward Tilly Crow now, and in a gentle, unassuming voice asked what time dinner would be. I do wish everyone would stop calling it dinner, said Tilly peevishly. It'll be just a cold supper. There's is so much over from lunch. I thought of it just for the family, and I hope Mr. Spear would not mind it being cold. She glanced as she spoke, not at Dave, but at John. And it was John who lifted up his voice in answer. Don't think of me in your hospitality, Mrs. Crow, I beg. I shall be running up that bill. It is not so, Philip, that we spoke of at the inn? That's a bad reading of mine, I apologize. He rose to his feet as he said this. But Philip rose too. You misunderstood me, Mr. Crow, he said sharply. It was only a bedroom I was unable to offer you. He paused for a second while a flicker of unconcealed distaste crossed his features. But of course you are jesting. Anyway, you're free to enjoy which you please. A hot supper at the inn or a cold supper with us here? Well, he added in a different tone, I've got some writing to do, and I think I'll desert you all now and do it in the study. There was a general movement to leave the table at this point, and under the protection of the confusion, John whispered to Mary, Look here, I'm not coming up here again. That beggar hates me comme le diable, which I think means like the devil, in a Francois. You come tomorrow morning, after breakfast, and call for me at the inn. Huh? I'll find out if we can't get a boat on the big river. Anyway, you tell Aunt Elizabeth that you're off for the day. How long are you going to stay here? What? Womanlike. Mary went straight to the main issue. What time shall I call out for you, John? Oh, about 10, if you're not too early. If that's not too early. That'll give me time to find out about the boat. She gave him a peculiar look. It was a steady, calm look. Above all, it was a stripped look. It held his attention for a second, but he missed everything about it that was important. He missed its touching confidence, its bone-to-bone honesty. He missed its unquestioning little girl reliance upon him. He missed its weariness, he missed its singleness of heart. You won't change your mind, John, and start off for Glastonbury at dawn? It was his turn now to reveal, in an eyelid flicker of self-abandonment, the animal primitive basis of his nature. It had evidently crossed his mind, in his reaction from the pressure of the family, that it would be nice to escape and to be upon the road alone. His face betrayed all this, but the newly born maternal tenderness in her tone expressed itself in such a gleam of humorous indulgence that he was lifted up out of the shame of having been caught in such a treachery on a delicious wave of sheer repose upon her understanding. Whew. No, I won't change my mind, he whispered. But don't let anything they say keep you from coming, Mary. I think I can get you a little more money for the road, John, she said hurriedly. He treated this with the decisive gesture of a strong man showing off before a weak girl. I'll be very angry if you do, he said. Nothing would make me take it, so it's better not to waste breath. Both dining room and drawing room and the hall and the passage outside these rooms were now left to themselves. Silent and alone, too, the now darkened conservatory listened to the placid, subhuman breathings of heliotrope and lemon verbena, the latter with a faint catch in its drowsy susurration, where one of its twigs was bleeding a little from the impact of the fingers of the indignant Mr. Didlington. Silent and alone, the broad staircase fell into the trance of romantic melancholy, which was its invariable mood when the hall lamp was first lit. The oil paintings upon its walls looked out from their gilt frames with a peculiar expression of indrawn expectancy, self-centered and yet patiently waiting, of which human passers-by catch only the psychic echo of shadow over aftertaste, for a single flicker of a second, as if they had caught them off guard. Of all these rooms, the one that now fell into the most intense attitude of strained expectancy was the drawing-room. You ought to have been older than all your brothers, woman instead of younger. You ought to have been older than all your brothers, woman, instead of younger. Okay. The words emanated from a pale, insubstantial husk upon the air, a husk that resembled the cast-off skin of a snake, or the yet more fragile skin of a newt, diaphanous and yet flaccid, a form, a shape, a human transparency, limned upon the darkness upon the great chair to the left of the fireplace. The words were almost as faint as the subhuman breathings of the plants in the conservatory. They were like the creakings of chairs after people have left a room for hours. They were like the opening and shutting of a door in an empty house. They were like the groan of a dead branch in an unfrequented shrubbery at the edge of a forsaken garden. They were like the whistle of the wind in a ruined clock tower without bell or balustrade, bare to the rainy sky, white with the droppings of jackdaws and starlings, forgetful of its past, without a future save that of anonymous dissolution. They were like the words murmured in a ruined court, where water from a broken cistern drips disconsolately upon darkening stones, while one shapeless idol talks to another shapeless idol as the night falls. They were like the murmurs of forgotten worm-eaters' eaten boards, lying under a dark, swift stream, boards that once were the mossy spokes of some old water-mill, and in the day have caught the gleams of many a morning sun, but now are hardly noticeable even to swimming water-rats. No sooner were these words uttered than a simulacrum in human form, seated opposite to the shade of the rector, returned a bitter response. A cruel coward is what you are, William Crow, and what you've always been. But if ever, when I am dead, you leave your money to anyone but Philip's son, I will punish you with a punishment worse than God's. While these words were being uttered, the thin wraith from whom they came became lividly accentuated in its facial outlines, which were of a ghastly pallor and hideously emaciated. But at the close, while she was actually crying out worse than God's, not a vestige of her lineaments remained visible. The other wraith, too, and the chair opposite, although a faint film of his identity survived hers by 2 or 3 seconds, soon likewise faded. The chairs, the pictures, the ornaments on the mantelpiece were already lost in darkness. The fire was now nearly extinct. The only glimmer it was able to throw, in feebler and feebler jets from a little blue flame that kept racing along a charred bit of burnt wood, fell upon a tall, gilded screen painted with mythological figures. These intermittent flickerings soon died down in a dusky red spot that illuminated nothing, and itself became dimmer and dimmer. One of the big windows had been opened by Tilly Crows to air the room, while they all went to their tea. And through this window, the presence of the night flowed in. Sweet-scented, obliterating, equalizing, it flowed in, taking the bitterness from defeat, taking the triumph from victory, and diffusing through the air an essence of something inexplicable, something beyond hope and beyond despair, full of pardon and peace. Well, that's the end of Chapter 1. The Will. Whew. We're 66 pages in, so some ghosts were just conversing, some boring conversation between relatives that all seem to hate each other about this will business. And next time in Glastonbury Romance, we'll begin Chapter 2, which is the river. So I'll hope to see you then. Cheers.